Well, I hope everyone's having a good morning. We got some ideas to work out because I was thinking, how about not similar to Castlevania Aria of Sorrow? What if we had a game that was a metroidvania with elements of Pokemon? In the sense that I will be working these ideas out on stream, so bear with me as we go through this process. Uh, we'll be drawing out some design plans. I have some very specific things in mind. I've been riding my bike for like 2 hours at a time, so it gives a lot of room for some creative juices. And I was just, you come up with these crazy ideas, but it's one thing to have an idea, it's another thing to implement that idea. So that being said, I think this is a pretty cool idea. I've never really seen anything like it. I mean, it's not too dissimilar to some other game designs. However, I do think it would be pretty unique, and it would be a game that I would want to play. And for now, I think there's a lot we can do. We've seen from Pokemon MMO how much capability you have with Game Boy Advance development. And I do want to add online kind of tournament style PvP and also PvE elements to it. But it mainly will be a single player game. That is the goal. However, I do want to add playability for streamers specifically. The homebrew development scene is really like a underdeveloped. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I'm not aware about, but there is a very strong sense of community, is what I understand. And especially with games like Pokemon MMO, where people have been able to create an entire world that is inhabitable by multiple players. I'm guessing using some kind of server interacting with Lua through an emulator. Is from what my understanding is that any kind of additions that you'll have, any kind of expansion on a Game Boy Advance game requires you to use Lua script and possibly some kind of server situation is what I'm imagining, because you'll need ways to augment the code, because there's only so much that a Game Boy Advance file can handle. I do think this is possible for what I have in mind. I don't think it's too advanced, but we have to come up with the idea first, and then we have to figure out a way to implement it. First of all, need to figure out a way to actually make the base game. But I need to make the base game with the understanding that it needs to be able to, without too much modification, be integrated into my final design plans. I have to go from the beginning, understanding my goals. And so I don't know, this is a fun hobby to have, is just create a fun game that I want to play that is copyright free, because it's going to be completely developed by me. It means I have to learn a lot of different development aspects because I'm the sole developer, which means that I might have to, maybe not the sole developer. I could probably eventually, get somebody else to do the graphics. But I don't know. I think that would be kind of interesting for me to work on, is to do some sprite, at the very least, do some, sprite alterations. I downloaded a bunch of sprites. For example, I could just take sprites from a different game and then just alter them enough to be unique, like kind of use them as a baseline, as like a template, but then make my own unique designs and animations. However, I don't think we're that far yet. We need to get the base game developed, which we can use like basic blocks of color for that. We don't really need advanced animation till all the code is where it needs to be for the baseline game. And I would like to get a working prototype that has all the final features ready before I even start the advanced development. My philosophy is that something should work before you polish it. And first, the single player game needs to exist, but I'd also like to be able to make sure that the netcode works and that people would be able to connect. And I do want to create a sort of system where there is some RNG, but like similar to Diablo, where you will continually, as you get higher and higher level, you increase challenge level to have increasingly rare drops and customizability. Customizability is a huge part of this game that I want to make. I'm going to call it Star Lore. We were thinking Stario and the copyright goblin. I think Star Lore is like I think it's a good starting point. In fact, let me actually start a GitHub repo. If I could sign in to GitHub. When's the last time I signed in? Sheesh. Okay, let's do a new. I need to make a new repo. Star Lore. Okay, public, readme file, license, do I want to make this a GNU license? I want to make this Creative Commons? No, I think GNU v2. V2 has some very specific differences from V3. I mean, either way, this isn't the final product. This is just to start it, so. Okay. Star Lore. Here we go, and then I'll edit the README. A metroidvania. A single player game with netcode, with online features in the genre of metroidvania with strong elements inspired by the Pokimane series. Okay. Oh, what the fuck? Uh-oh. How do I get rid of the commit history? I think there was an issue there. Hey, what's up, Dirty Cam? Why are you so dirty? uh... Can I delete a commit? I used the wrong email for it. I don't think it's a big deal. Oh yeah, like why is that old email still in there? Every single time. What software I'm developing? So I want to develop a game as a hobby project, as a creative endeavor with an idea that I've been exploring, which is a metroidvania with elements of Pokemon. And part of that is inspired also in a large part by the Diablo system of item drops. We're gonna work out. I need to work out some of the details before I even like. We're already getting started, and I have a very clear cut idea of how I want to. Oh God, I have a very kind of clear cut idea on how I want to proceed with the development stages. I am very meticulous about how I do things, and I like being very wary of future pitfalls because I don't want to get started and waste a whole bunch of time. I don't really consider it a waste, but I don't really want to. I want to just get started with the design phase because that's the most important one. Because if I don't have a solid design, what am I gonna make? It's like, so I can't just, you don't just start coding. You got to start out with a solid idea and then you implement the idea. That's the only part. Like coding is like the least important part in my opinion. People always say learn to code, and it's like, no, don't learn how to code, learn how to create. And creation goes beyond programming. Creation goes, then you're starting to go into the territory of writers, which I'm a writer, so I will write the story. This game will be 100% completed by me as a long-term hobby project. I think this USB cable is broken. It's the only one I have. It's like every time I get a USB cable, it seems to like not work. There it is. Okay, so here we go. I'm basically oops. Wrong color. Wrong brush size. Okay, star. And let's make a big one. Star lore. The battle of the copyright goblin. I don't know. I don't know if that subtitle is Oh, this is way too big. Oh. Okay. Basically, Oops. If I have like idea. So the idea is basically metroidvania. Let's make this a little bigger. Metroidvania is the core game. And Pokemon style enhancements. So what do I mean? This is actually kind of more so inspired by Kirby, but it has like RPG elements that I would think are closer to Pokemon, but it's so basically Star lore. He's got that's his uniform, I guess. Uh Basically all the things that are shaded in are going to be equipment that will be customizable. So everything that's so you have head, hands, feet, and you also have like knees. Oh no, I guess you can just consider that waist. Oh, and of course body. Okay. So basically it's going to be like, in effect, this is going to be like Diablo. You're going to basically have a bunch of empty customizable gear. And each gear piece, it starts with no attributes. So Star lore starts with a basic attack, melee attack, no abilities, and no armor. So there's going to be like elemental like resistance, spikes, like spike effects, which are like, if you get hit by an enemy, it does like a spike, like regen type, like basically every single, like your armor is going to be able to be customizable. And I feel like it's the customizing part. So the custom armor attributes, the basic idea that I have is that you'll be like, let's say this is a stage, right? And there's like, some platforms, right? And here's Star-Lord. And you're going along. Oops. You're going along, and there's like some kind of enemy. right? Maybe it has like horns, right? And you would basically, these are normal enemies. They give like, you know, plus 30 XP or something like that. And every now and then, and this is where the Lua script would come in, every now and then there's certain mobs, and I kind of take this from certain MMOs, like Final Fantasy XI, for example, certain mobs that are going to be placeholders and different kind of lottery mechanics or time spawn. So lottery spawn, so no placeholder, and oh no, yeah, placeholder, and you can also just have like, you know, just straight up, there could be an empty one. And these are basically like, you know, these are special like HQ versions of the monsters. And so this is like a timed spawn. So it requires like a specific amount of gameplay to have passed in game before it'll spawn. So like certain ones won't spawn for like 24 hours after you started the game, for example. Or something like that. Maybe not 24 hours. But like you have to play the game for like at least 8 hours before certain ones will spawn, and they're much higher level, etc. And once they spawn, you know, you can't just sit there and wait the game out, because if you're low level, you have no enhanced equipment, that thing will actually get in the way of your progress. So if you know, there's going to be some design ideas where I need to make sure that people can't game the system, you know, by just AFKing for like 4 hours and then getting this time spawn for a very specific thing that'll like overpower them. Balance issues are always important to me. I don't want a game to be, you know, I don't want a game to be like, you know, cheated. I don't want someone to be able to say, oh, I can find this glitch or this feature to basically, you know, completely make the game irrelevant. I want the game to be playable. So this is a time spawn one. And basically these ones will have a health bar. So health bar. These other ones are more basic enemies. You kind of have to guess their health and stuff like that. They're pretty easily, you know, dealt with. More in the classic like metroidvania style. But the ones with the health bars, this is where we get into Pokemon mechanic. If you accidentally kill it, you can't get their ability. I mean, you can't get... basically, you're going to have to... there's an item system, and certain items, and we're going to call this like... some kind of capture device, like a Pokeball. I don't know what it's going to be called. Capture device. Just like unnamed capture device. Won't be able to use other abilities while equipped. So it uses up your hands. So it means you won't be able to attack, and you won't be able to use other abilities. Except for ones that are passive. You can passives still active. So you're going to have passives like for your armor. But you know, your active abilities, you won't be able to use active abilities while you have the capture device. And the capture device, you would then, you know, gets to like, you know, you could technically try to use it at 100% health. it's going to be like, like 0.0001% chance of capture. And then like if you're at like less than 1% health, then that's like depending on the monster, it could be like, like between like 75% to 100%. Or maybe even less, like maybe even like some are still like maybe 0.1%, some might even be 0.1% instead of 0.001%, like, to like 25%, right? So some are going to be really easy to get, like the very like basic ones are going to be easier to get. The whole game is going to be based off this. There's going to be so many different things to capture because in effect, they're going to be like randomized to an extent, depending on the HQ, depending on the quality of the ability or the item. So there's going to be like items, like some of them are going to have items, although most items are probably going to be farmable by regular, like by NQ mobs. But the HQ mobs, they're going to have special items, special abilities. And once you get an ability, you don't have to get it again. The abilities are what you customize the armor with. And you have like, let's say you get a piece of armor from either a drop. So there's armor and there's abilities. So obtainables. So these are obtainables through farming, NQ and HQ, and possibly storyline, and also purchase. So there's probably like a currency. There's going to be like a currency. Like 1,000, like chips or whatever you want to call it. So like you're going to be able to purchase items. You're going to, storyline will give you certain items, and NQ and HQ monsters can, mobs can give you items. So for example, so here's an example of like, let's say you have like a helmet or something, this is like a, horn helmet. So like you have like a horn helmet, and this is like a level 3 item. It has like, like some stats like strength, and then, like maybe it has, like a tier system for abilities. So it's like a like, tier 1 is going to be like the lowest level. So it's going to be like tier 1 ability. And it only has, and it only has 1. But let's say you have like, like an HQ horn element, like horn helmet. Like it's a unique item, where you can only carry 1 at a time. So you could possibly get a higher level one, but you'd have to drop the one you have, right? So it's like there's a system in Final Fantasy 11, like unique item. So this is like what I call like rare exclusive, meaning you can only have 1, and you can't like purchase it online. Which I will have like eventual like netcode to have like an auction house, an arena, so you can battle other people, and also special co-op modes. specific like levels or whatever that you could do co-op. Like this is like, for like events, right? To get unique items that only exist for certain events, right? That you'd have to be there to get it, and if you're not there, you miss out on it. But they could potentially, cycle through, right? So people can get certain ones. Might be like, if it's some kind of event that's like only once in a lifetime or something like that. I don't know, but those items probably wouldn't be like, they'd probably only be like cosmetic or whatever. So this one, maybe it's level 9, and it has like, a few different stats, like, agility and stuff like that. But it also has the option of, 2 separate T1 and T1. And then when you have multiple abilities, you get like a synergy system, which basically allows you to combine 2 different abilities that you've learned from these HQ monsters, because you can get drops from them, but you don't always, you could either kill them to get drops, or you could capture them to get their ability, kind of like Mega Man or like a Blue Mage or like a Pokemon, whatever. And each one is going to have, because it's a timed spawn or a lottery spawn with a placeholder, which will also have like, like a cooldown. So you can't just sit there and farm it all day. Like maybe this placeholder lottery spawn will only spawn like once every 20 minutes or something like that. So you'd have to come back after 20 minutes of gameplay to go get that one. But this one, like it'll spawn every hour, whether or not you kill the placeholder or not. So you'd have to farm the enemies here. And sometimes you'd be, you're trying to get a certain item. Maybe you don't want to be farming those mobs because they don't really give anything you need. So it's like you have to determine like how much you want that item or that ability. So if they have an ability, they'll have like a family of abilities, each type of monster. And the main appeal of this game is that it's going to be so customizable that there's going to be so many different types of monsters to choose from. It's basically going to be, that's where Pokemon comes in. There's going to be a certain, because, it's a whole metroidvania style game. So there's room for lots of different families of monsters. So there's going to be different HQ versions of those. Every single one of those has one or possibly more versions of HQ. So each HQ one has certain family of abilities, and coming up with those is, going to be a difficult design hurdle, but it's not insurmountable. But you could basically, each one, when it spawns, it has a randomized selection of that ability. And when you capture it, you have a percentage chance of learning that ability. And so when you learn the ability, you have it forever. But you can only put the abilities into equipment. So if you have only one ability, you get the ability, which is nice. Like like maybe it has like, like movement speed, like plus 1% or something like that. But if you have like a synergy system, so maybe you have like movement speed, but if you have one that also gives attack speed, for example, and you use both of these together, it also creates a synergy that like gives some other ability or enhances those two, depending on which version of this. because they're all going to have like, you know, maybe it's going to be like like maybe I'll use like, you know, just Pokemon style for now, just to give the examples. So you have like fire, you know, water, stone, air, you know, dark, light. You have like tech, so like technology. You have tech. You have you know, bug. You have wood. You know, like you have all these different types of, or you know, like metal. All these different types of, you know, like let's say spirit, like ghost, demon, like all the different types of, you know, and there could also be an angel type, I guess. I don't know, like different types of abilities, and they all have, you know, different kinds of stats. You could have like maybe this is a fire type, and this is also a fire type, so the synergy gives like plus 25% fire damage added to attacks, right? But if you switch one of these out, you lose that. And maybe you get another one, and a lot of stuff just can't synergize. Or, I don't know. I want to make the game as customizable as possible, so I feel like everything should have some sort of synergy ability, and that would be the fun of the game would be for the player to figure out, and I guess the player base, you know, would fill out like a wiki of every single possible combination. And I might even make the combinations so insurmountably understanding, like that it's actually determined by like algorithm based. And that would be where the testing comes in, because like maybe I want to make it so that like if you give things certain attributes, it'll be added into an algorithm. And so even I, as a developer, have to also play the game to figure out how it works. And so like I need to design an algorithm that'll take different features and give them different attributes that add to an equation that then determines the synergy values. So it's like, you know, it's basically going to be kind of organic. And that puts a level of RNG that increases the development deep, like testing. It increases the amount of testing that has to be done. But that's kind of the beauty of it, is that it's a work in progress game, that the players and the developers are also testing it. You know, and that is the game. Like the whole game is that you're testing out, like that's the appeal of it. It's for players. So the target audience, the target player is someone who wants an endless search for min-maxing, someone who enjoys metroidvania genre, someone who loves customization, and also just someone who enjoys PvP and PvE. Or also someone who enjoys a compelling story. Because it is going to be kind of like a story about, like, the single player story is that you're a kind of like, you're Star-Lord, not Star-Lord. You're Star-Lord, and there is another type of your species that basically is able to, and the reason they're not actually equipment, it's actually your body. But you're able to, Star-Lord, he's able to learn from enemies, like learn from other people how to adapt his, and he's basically a ditto. But like, he's able to adapt his body to change shape and change abilities. So there's another one of his species named, like, we just know the copyright goblin. So we're just going to call Goblin for now. There is an antagonist named Goblin that is basically seeking out to, and there's like, the fact that it's online, there's netcode, is actually kind of integrated into the storyline, because the storyline involves, I mean, I guess you can think of like, Mega Man Battle Network kind of thing. It's basically, there is a galactic, network that people of his species can integrate themselves into. But Goblin took it upon himself to basically start getting rid, start like deleting like a bunch of backups to a server. Or like just like really like deleting servers and stuff like that. So basically your job is to find all the backups throughout the game, and you're going to need to learn abilities either through storyline or through, there are storyline abilities, because you not everything is going to be just completely, based on this system. This is like more for like the, end game. I mean, the whole game's going to be like this, but like most of this is going to be like after you've gotten pretty far into the game, but it's going to be right away. Like, there's going to be lower level stuff and higher level stuff. The end game is really going to be like what keeps people playing, because there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff, and it can continually be added too, because this is going to all be based on like a netcode system, rather than hard coded into the game. So basically, if I'm going to do that, I need to make sure that there's enough ability to integrate sprite systems for new enemies, and that's going to be kind of a difficult challenge. But I could always just I have to be able to make the game pretty easy to maintain, which from the beginning I need to design it with the ability to not have as little hard coding as possible in the enemy system. So the enemies need to be able to be easily customized through Lua scripts. So that adds like potential update without having to update the entire game. Now, obviously, there will be times where I have to update the game, so then there'll be new versions of the game. But in an ideal world, I should be able to just make one version of the game, and then everything from then on can be updated through netcode, without the players having to like reinstall it. So like this would all be taken care of server side, and it would take all the onus off of the players. I would feel like that's like the ideal situation. Obviously, ideal situation, you put things in hypothesis, but it's not a theory until you actually do it. I think that the main appeal of the game is the synergy system. because you can get all the different base abilities. And these are like passives, so there's also active abilities, and that's where it kind of turns into Mega Man. So you'll get certain items that, in order to collect, because there's like a certain percentage completion kind of system. You know, you can get a minimum amount of the, you know, computer backups, and there's going to be like these like CDs that you have to go, or floppy disks. Yeah, you're going to have to go and find floppy disks across the entire map. And certain ones are only obtainable through the plot line. Certain ones are only obtainable through exploration. And that's going to be like the main appeal of the game, is that you're going to need certain abilities in order to get access. Like let's say there's something like way up here, right? And there's like a ledge, and there's like, in order to get up there, you have to like double jump, right? Let me take away the in order to get up there, you'd have to double jump, right? So like double jump. You know, so like that's like a basic example. And this is not like, I'm not reinventing the wheel here. This is all basically like Castlevania or Metroid stuff. You know, this is like, you know, this is basic Metroidvania stuff. You know, and I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm trying to create an enjoyable play experience. That, you know, that somebody who enjoys these types of games would find something that isn't boring. That they've been waiting for a game like this, and when they play this, they feel satiated. They feel like this is the game for me that I've been waiting for since like Super Metroid, or, you know, whatever their favorite Metroidvania was. Like, you know, maybe the last time they really enjoyed a game like this was like a long time ago, and they want to play a game that's like this, and with like MMO elements is like actually, I think, like what makes it like really nice, is because then you can, like, there's an auction house, you know, and some kind of trading system, so you can actually trade off abilities, and then you'd have to relearn it again. Right? And you can definitely trade items. And the thing is there's HQ items that are rare, meaning you can only have one. And then exclusive means you can't trade it. Can't trade. You can only farm it. And I think if they're both, you know, those are like the hardest to get. But it means that if you drop it, you can drop these, can drop. You can actually drop these, and once you drop it, it's gone forever. Like, it just drop to void. Once you drop it, it's gone forever. And you'd have to get it again. And when you get it again, it might not have as good stats. It might have better stats. So like it's kind of like Diablo in that sense, that you can get items. You could probably do like some kind of like upgrade system, which involves like, you know, trading, using farmables to upgrade or add stats, you know, like something like that, using farmables. But there's a limit, because every single item has like an item level, and if it starts out small, it's going to have a cap on how much, you know, has a cap. It has a cap on how much you can upgrade. So if you want to be able to get the strongest item possible, you have to, if something is rare, or, you know, that you can only hold one, then you're going to have to make that calculation, that gamble. And this is where it does have gambling aspect to it. So this is kind of like gambling. People love gambling, right? So it's kind of like gambling. So if you drop this item, you're going to have to make that calculation on whether or not you're going to be willing to do the work to get that item back. And when you get it back, you might get a weaker version of it. So then you'd have to drop it again. So it's like, if you have a good enough item, you have to be like, do I really want to drop this? Or, maybe hold on to it until you start losing in PvP, right? So there's like an arena. So it's like PvP. And this is like PvE. More or less, I mean, the storyline, I don't really the storyline can come later. That's probably one of the, like, the storyline and the music and like the artwork, that's like the last step. First, I need to get like the game working. That's the most important. And once the game's working, the storyline can kind of be added to it. And I feel like it's better to come up with the storyline later, because I'll know what's possible within the game mechanics. And the storyline, I feel like storyline is affected by the vibe of the game. And you can't just tack on a storyline to any, like, it has to be integrated into the game mechanics. And it has to match the game world. So if I haven't designed the world, how am I supposed to design the storyline? Because the game, especially in the genre and the medium of video games, the storyline, the setting is a huge part of the storyline. You play a game like Elder Scrolls. There's a whole world that the whole reason people like it is because they like the world. They like the lore, the universe, and the storyline comes from that. So, you can't just make a story and then just tack it onto a game. You make a story that's directly integrated into the game. Okay, sorry, I got a text. So I feel like I accomplished a lot today. I came up with this during a bike ride. Because I started learning, some basic, like, C++ stuff, and I want a project to yeah, there's some kind of like he's trying to get copyright strike. I mean, maybe that's the storyline. Is Starlord is the copyright goblin the goblin is, trying to copyright strike him and delete him from the network. So your goal is just, this is a game of survival. Like you're trying to fight for, against the copyright. Right? the storyline is that you're trying to fight against the copyright strike. That, I think that's a pretty basic storyline. I think it can be pretty compelling if done right. But first I need the game. So, it's at its core, it's a metroidvania with MMO elements. With a lot of, kind of Pokimane style capture and customizability with items obtainable and abilities learnable. That are, and maybe certain ones, they're coming up with the way to customize the armor. There's certain abilities that can be used on any armor piece, and there's certain abilities that can only be used on like your hands, or like, that has like, maybe it's an attack ability, like a specific attack, like a spiral, or like a ranged attack, or, like, everything is customizable. And once you could use your ranged attack, there's going to be like, maybe there's a headpiece that you put on your hands. On each hand you can have different ones. So on one hand you have like a ranged attack, but on the other hand you have an ability that augments that ranged attack to make like multiple projectiles, or like make like it into like a more like a stronger version of it that's like slower, or like make it so that it has less cooldown, or like stuff like that. Like you can alter the ability and it changes the animation too. So it's like, and I want to be able to have a lot of mystery to how that works. Like there's going to be a certain stability to it. There's going to be a system in place where it's going to be, there can only be so much variation. Because obviously if it's just infinite, that'll create like an insane amount of bugs. But if I restrict it to like, okay, so this ability can be augmented in the following ways. And if you use if it's this element and you use this other element, it can only have certain like variations of it. But those variations within itself can end up being randomized in a way through an algorithm, because I want to be able to make it scalable. Because if I hard code every single connection, then I can't really add anything new. But if I make it scalable, so that if I add an entire, like let's say I add an entire new ability, then how is that ability going to interact with the others? So it needs a certain amount of attributes that would affect this algorithm equation. So really I need to come up with an equation for calculating. Like that's going to be like the main challenge of this synergy system. If I don't have a solid algorithm, it's not going to work. So before I even implement this system, I need to make sure that the algorithm works, that there is an algorithm for figuring out what stats get added. Because if I hard code it, then it's like I have to go back and hard code it again every single time I want to add something new, and that might introduce bugs or other kind of glitches to previous established stat bonuses. So if I make it so that it's organic, so that it's based on like an algorithm rather than a hard code, then that means that there's so much customizability that nobody knows what's possible for the most, min-maxed. It allows the players to come up to explore the game, and the developers. So the developers and the players in this sense are on the same playing field, that the player becomes the developer, because players will come up with strategies that, for PvP especially, that the developers could never, and I'm the developer, could never come up with alone. that collectively the players create the game. And I feel like that's what's going to make this game really special, is that, you know, you have this virtually endless combinations of abilities, because there might be the same type of abilities, but they have different types. You know, like you have an ability that's fire, but you have that same exact kind of ability, but it's bug. You know, so it's like, if it's bug type, you know, it's going to affect synergy differently. And it might even create new attacks. And the attacks are going to be based on the algorithm adjusting your hitboxes. So like the sprites can be manipulated in ways that it needs to be designed so that it can be flexible enough to basically not have to be hard coded. Where that means the animation has to be figured out ahead of time. That it needs to be a system where if you have certain abilities, it'll change the animation, which will also change how it affects, because it needs to be like hitbox type stuff. So like you might have different sub variations of an attack that alters it slightly differently from everybody else. So literally no two players are ever going to be alike, because every single item is unique. You know, they're all like, you know, obviously there's basic items, but even those items can be augmented. Like you can probably like augment a level 3 item to be able to synergize. You know, if you wanted to have like, you know, some kind of PvP event with people where you only use level 3 items, or like, you know what I mean? Like for a Twitch stream or something. You know, you have like a community event where you start like an arena server of like, you know, people, like, you know, you start an arena 1v1s with people who in your Twitch community, for example, who only use level 3 items, and you'd have to like, you know, in order to start the PvP, you're allowed to look at each other's items. And, you know, and both players have to agree before they start. And there could be hardcore arenas, where hardcore arenas you can get more rewards, but you'll lose your character permanently. And then you have to start the game over. So there should be a mode that's like, after you, there should be like a new game plus. Like after you beat the storyline, then like you beat the storyline, and then it unlocks like a new version of the game that's like, you know, once you beat the game, you don't have to beat the game again. So like you can just, from then on, maybe that's how you unlock PvP. And then once you can do PvP, it assumes that you've already beaten the game. Or something like that. I don't know. Yeah, I don't really know what to, I mean, I spent like an hour on this. I didn't have this document before, so, you know, now I've come up, you know, talked about this idea a little bit more, so I feel like I accomplished something today. And, you know, the longer I think about this, and, you know, eventually I have to just start getting into, you know, there's also, you know, this gives me a target. Like, this gives me a target of, you know, maybe at first I can just design the basic, you know, like this is going to be my first programming challenge, is to make this. Make like a basic, and it's going to start out with tiers. Like you start out with like just, you know, star and an enemy, and like a basic enemy. And I need to be able to make it so that I can move around left and right and jump and do an attack Like I just do one thing at a time. First, I need to render the actual level. And it's just going to be like a flat line. And like, I mean, I could literally just make this, like make a wall and then platforms to jump. And then one that requires double jumping. This will be the first task. So that gives me a target. This gives me an actual target. And I don't even have to make it very complicated. I can use this, I can make this using like basic, like a star, like JPEG and like a block, or, you know, like even just draw it like this. And like, I mean, I could literally even just, that's the enemy. You know, like, I don't need to make it look pretty. I just need it to work. And that's the goal. You know, that's going to be my very first programming challenge for this project. You know, and another part of this is a completely different separate system, is I need to be able to program the item system. This is going to be the more challenging one that's going to require some heavy mathematics, because I need to figure out from the beginning an algorithm that works, that takes all these different features and allows customization that not only affects your stats, but affects your actual hitboxes. And, you know, like it'll change the way. I'll have to be able to program in somehow that if you attack with like a certain item equipped that extends the range of your attack, then it actually moves and animates that way. And not only animates, but the animation affects the actual hitboxes. And that's going to be a real challenge, but that's what I want. If there's a will, there's a way. I can find a way to program that in. And either I can make this in I have a very ambitious goal of making this entirely in Game Boy Advance with netcode, because you can do that. I know you can, because Pokemon MMO exists. So this is basically going to be similar to the Pokemon MMO project with netcode. Or at least, like, you know, for the single player game, you know, there's like Lua script and stuff like that. And I don't know exactly how to do that, but we're going to learn it. Like this is we're going to figure out. And like right now we're just in design. You know, right now we're just designing. That has nothing to do with programming, like, you know, any kind of code. Implementing it is what figuring out how to implement the design is where the code comes in. And so once we start to go through the coding, you know, the programming process of turning this idea into a reality, which I can start right now. Maybe not right now. I need to take a break. But I can start like immediately from just designing this basic prototype on this screen right here. So I don't need to like delay this forever. I could start progress on this today if I wanted to. Because all I have to do is make the prototype of this. And I could even make this an entire functioning prototype that implements the regular mobs, the HQ mobs, and the unique mobs. Like, I guess, you know, it's like these are like the lottery spawn or HQ, and the time spawns are unique. Oops. Oh. So like with time spawns, there's only like once you only get one shot at it. And then the time spawn gets replaced somewhere else. Like I don't know how, I mean, it's gonna be there's HQ versions of the regular mobs, but then these are like unique mobs. that are like, there's going to be a large selection of them. And it's, there's not, it's not going to, certain ones, maybe they have like 100% learn rate of abilities or whatever. But if you kill it, you'll never get it. But these are going to be only like end game style. Like these are going to be only stuff that you would really need for PvP. This isn't you're not going to need these to progress through the storyline. These are going to be unique abilities that if you miss out on it, if you save the game after it, then you can't get it again. So maybe you could retry it over and over. I don't want to punish people by making it like, I don't want to make this game only online. That's not my intention. I hate that. The live service games, not that there's anything wrong with live service games, but this isn't intended to be a live service game. This is intended to be a single player game with online features that you can go into a lobby to do auction house, to do arena, to do co-op modes. Those are going to be stuff that is added to the base game. That is my goal. I do not want to make a live service game. I don't want to make a, auto save. I want this game to be like the old school games where if you save the game, it saves where you're at and you get to decide when you save. So if you haven't saved in a while, then you might have to backtrack a lot. But I feel like the replayability of it and make it not in a punishing way, but in a challenging way, so that if somebody, and you have to punish them a little, but not so much that they turn the game off, like permanently. So like I'm thinking about streamers. So if a streamer wants to play this game, there might be certain unique mobs that they might have to fight like for a few hours. And that might be like a huge like challenge, and their stream would probably enjoy watching them mauled. There's always, like Dark Souls kind of thing, right? People like that. Even if they, hate it sometimes. People, at the base level, people really like that kind of stuff. Even if they don't think they do. The people really like, like being punished to an extent. That's why people play Dark Souls. Yeah, I don't really know what else I can add today for this, but I'm going to keep thinking about this. I'm going to keep, pecking away at my C++ project. I want to go through the tutorial I'm going through first, so I can understand what I'm working with. And I also want to understand what's possible. And before I even start working on the code for this, because I want to build this prototype, I want to make sure that I'm not limited in what I can accomplish, because I want to make sure that before I even start coding, I need to make sure that I might need to use something, I want to do my best to try to make this playable on Game Boy Advance with netcode, with Lua code. Which this is probably what's going to, like, this is probably way too big for the base cartridge. Like, for the base game, you probably, like, for the synergy mode, because this is just so expansive, you might need to have like a server, like a local server, running, like a local Lua server running to be able to calculate all these things. And the base game itself, takes care of like all the, that's where all the, like, the stuff is going to be utilized. But all this stuff that augments it, so I need to make sure that it's augmentable with, and that anything that's done in this system, doesn't break the game. That's going to be the big challenge of the synergy system. Everything else is pretty straightforward, like basic items and stats. That's pretty straightforward for video games. Storyline, that's just a matter of writing. Uh, Gameplay, that's pretty standard stuff. Metroidvania, pretty standard. It's just implementing it in my own way is what's going to be the big challenge, because I've never done it before. So this is going to be, it's kind of an ambitious project, but I don't think it's too big of a project. In fact, I could probably get a prototype running pretty quickly. And the goal is to get something working, not to make it perfect, because you can always make it better later. But if I can make it working, I'll have something that I can, you can't edit a blank page. I hope that I can, I think this is a productive use of my creative energy and a good way to pass the time while I'm going through this, probably the most difficult part of my transition these past 4 years. Getting this surgery has been the biggest challenge. My other surgery happened, and I did have orchiectomy, which is part of this final surgery, but I need the full bottom surgery. And so this final challenge, I'm doing a lot of bike riding. I rode my bike for 2 hours yesterday, on Sunday. On Saturday, I rode my bike for on Thursday, I rode for about 2.5 hours. On Saturday, I rode for 2 hours on my stationary bike because it was raining. Well, it's not a stationary bike; it's like a stationary setup, because I have like the equipment to like keep it, to modify, to allow stationary bike. I don't know what it's called. I did that for 2 hours, and yesterday I went on a ride for 2 hours. So I've been going for a walk for an hour when I'm not doing that. On rest days, I even like at least try to go out and walk for a bit. But I'm going to be maintaining that. I made my diet extremely strict. I'm only eating certain things. The only carbohydrates I get are from oatmeal and wheat germ and fresh fruit, like bananas and apples and oranges, as needed for my blood sugar. But oatmeal is a good way to manage blood sugar. It's lower on the glycemic index. It has fiber, and it's known to help manage diabetes. Because I need to get my A1C down by 0.3 points. And while I'm doing that, I have a couple different creative outlets that I'm doing. I do have like pure recreational time, like watching Netflix and other kind of stuff. But for the most part, like I actually have a lot of stuff that I'm working on, and all the extra exercise is actually, really kind of opening up a lot of my creative energy. Because I'm working on my novel again. And I'm working with my select few beta readers. I don't expect them to do any reading or commenting, but I invited them into it. And obviously it's a long-term project. I've been working on it for about 9 years. But now I'm actively working on it again, and I have a pretty solid understanding of the novel and how it's I pretty much have the whole thing figured out. I just need to actually go in and write it, which is it is a challenge. It's one thing to have an idea. It's another thing to actually make that idea happen, and sometimes your idea doesn't necessarily work out the way that you think it does. So that's part of the creative process. Is you can have an idea, but you have to be able to implement it in a way that is satisfactory. And my goal is to create a good manuscript that I could potentially sell. So, it's a first novel, so it's possible I won't be able to sell it, but I feel like if I work on it enough, I can make it sellable. At the very least, I could do self-publish, But I want to avoid self-publishing as all, if at all possible. I don't really have, I mean, I'm a nobody. Yeah, sometimes that's a way to grow, but I want to do my best to work with other people first, because that's really what makes a good book. It's not just the author, it's the author, the editor, the publishers, there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into it. It's not just me writing, because if, yeah, there is a lot of creative, independence in writing. However, I do think that the best writing involves collaboration, at least to some extent. So I really think that if you reach out to a publisher, the publisher has a better understanding of the market. The publisher has a better understanding of what works and what doesn't work. That if you get stuck inside of your own independent thinking, you might think something is oh, but I'm a creator, I'm an artist, and all that kind of stuff. But really, it just turns out to be mediocre, because you don't have the perspective that a publisher would have. Ironically, you end up being less creative, even though you think you're being creative. That's the challenge of being a creator and getting rid of the ego. Because if you get stuck in your own ideas, your ideas might suck. But you think that you're being an artist. Oh, it's just unique. And it's like, no, it's not unique. It's just bad. It's the only reason you think it's unique is because you haven't exposed yourself to a lot more similar works. So that's where collaboration comes in. Beta readers, editors, publishers, people who understand the market, like agents. That's where all that comes in. And so my goal is to work with other people, because I suck. Okay, I might have some interesting ideas, but making those ideas work is it's important to me. Okay, so if I have a creative idea, I want to make sure it works. And so that's where having a bit of humility is a big part of the creative process. And especially with this game project, I don't know what the end goal. I mean, the end goal is for me to have a project to learn C++ and Lua and game development and all that kind of stuff. So that's what this project is for, regardless of how it's received from the public. That is what it is. This game is, being built from the ground up. Ironically, even though I call it the copyright goblin, I'm not using any. I think if anything, I might have to avoid using the Game Boy Advance development environment. I need to look into the copyright of that, because it is owned by Nintendo. Even though I'm emulating the hardware, I don't know exactly how that would work out. It would be free to play. I'm not going to monetize it. So it's so maybe that's easier to deal with. Although then again, the Pokemon MMO exists, at least last time I checked, unless Nintendo cracked down on it. But the Pokemon MMO exists in the community. So if a hack of a Nintendo game is allowed to exist, I think a homebrew game that's 100% designed by me would be perfectly fine to exist out on the internet. So, and I could probably make it even so that it's not even obvious that it's a ROM. I don't even know. I can figure it out. That's something I don't need to think about right now. I do kind of need to think about maybe I need to use instead of using Game Boy Advance, maybe I could use a different game engine. I could probably even use Unreal Engine. I could, but I kind of want to have the challenge of making a Game Boy Advance development, because I like Game Boy Advance. I want to work within the limitations, but also use what's possible with the emulation, with Lua script and all that. I want to see. I want, because I've seen other people do it. I've seen Pokemon MMO. I've seen other augmentations using Game Boy Advance with Lua code and server kind of stuff. So I want to try it just to do it. Because it's one thing to say, oh yeah, you know, I should just use Unreal Engine. It's like, no, like I have a very specific plan. I have a goal. I want to actually make it happen. Because I think that's how you become a programmer, is you have a goal and you try to figure out how to make that goal happen. And if I do it right, I could probably adapt it to work with whatever my end product needs to be. It's going to be in C++, so for the most part, I might have to change a few libraries if I use different. I don't know. I should be fine. I'm not hacking a ROM. I'm making a homebrew game, so it's out there. You know, people do homebrew. People have community projects and stuff like that. So I feel like I could, you know, kind of be a part of the homebrew community and hopefully make a game that the homebrew community really loves and enjoys, and hopefully brings more people into the homebrew community. Anyway, I'm going to get ready for nothing because I don't really have anything going on today. I'm kind of just resting because I've been riding my bike for like 2 hours a day. So, I'm kind of just, you know, letting my body recover a lot. I might still go out for a bike ride today, so. I don't want to overdo it though. But, it's really important to me that I get my A1C down because otherwise this surgery can't happen. And I took it for granted. I did. I took it for granted. And I got a little bit on autopilot. And now I'm actively working on it. It might just be fine. I might just, when I get my A1C tested again in December, it might be like 6.9. It might even be lower. Who knows? It might, more realistically, it's probably closer to 7. So, I think if I keep this up, I'm going to have my surgery back on the schedule in no time. It is kind of... It is really kind of hard to keep going sometimes, but I have no choice. So I just have to keep going. I need to move my life forward, and I can't just keep going on like this. I need to move past this step. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make this surgery happen. And there's a lot of things that are on pause in my life because I can't even show up to doing it anymore. I don't feel like I can show up to do anything anymore. And the fact, the only reason I'm able to show up to do this kind of stuff is I think because it kind of goes along with the process. I'm kind of just focusing on this specific process now. I'm narrowing my vision down. I'm not thinking about the future for all this. I'm doing stuff that might affect the future, like this game design, like my novel. But I feel like those activities are more like kind of, this is what I can do during my rest time, like during my off time, like, doing exercise and focusing on my health, maintaining my cortisol levels by meditation and just staying calm and all that kind of stuff. I feel like a part of that, it's like I need stuff to do. Like I do have chess, but I can't really pursue, I can definitely not pursue my career goals. Because I just can't anymore. Like, I just can't. Like, the closer I've gotten to this surgery, and it's just made it, like, impossible for me to feel okay working right now. So, I can't work right now. And it sucks because I want to work. But my mental health is more important. You only get one brain, and no amount of money can repair it. I have to be able to stay focused on what I need to do. I unfortunately can't really be working on career goals right now. And it's really hurt me a lot because I know that I only get one life too. And I'm only getting older, but I'm not even that old. So I got plenty of time left in me. I got plenty of real estate left over. Some people in my industry don't start until their late 60s. So as long as I take care of my body and my health and my mental health, most importantly, which this is part of it. Because if I pursued my career right now, I'd be sacrificing my mental health, my general well-being, and I need that to be in top condition in order to make this surgery happen. And if this surgery doesn't happen, I'm, like if I pursued my career stuff, maybe I'll make some money short term. Maybe that'll be okay. But if I jeopardize my mental health for it, and if that jeopardizes my surgery, then it's going to get harder and harder and harder to maintain it. However, if I start from a good place, if I have my surgery, which completely changes my branding, by the way, so that's also another reason. But I'm not my career goals are not dependent on. And the reason the surgery is the reason it's dependent on the surgery is not because of the outcome of the surgery. It's because as far as it concerns to my branding or my image, or my target audience, because if I wanted to, if I didn't need surgery, I would be able to have a very successful career in my industry. But I need this surgery. There's a reason. And if I don't have this surgery, there is no career. Because I won't be okay. And I will not be able to do what's required to make it in the industry. And it has nothing to do with what body part I have, except for how that affects me. Because if I was okay with my body part the way it was, I would be fine. But I'm not fine. I am not okay. And if I'm not even okay, I'm just trying to cope with things the way they are, because it is only temporary, because the surgery is only slightly delayed. And it will still happen. I'm still on edge until it actually happens. And there's a lot of difficulties that come along with the surgery. There's a lot of, medical realities that come with it, but I don't think it's the end of the world. A lot of women have had this surgery, and they seem pretty damn happy about it. And yeah, of course, there's going to be the people who had terrible results. But if you really think about it, you see those people online because there's really no counter voices. A lot of women who go through the surgery don't go out and blast it on social media. So you have to realize that if all you see are like a small amount of people, it's going to seem like that's a lot of people. But you're not thinking about the thousands of other people who don't even go on social media to talk about it. Who are just happy with the results. So you got to think about big picture. And yeah, it's potential that something could go wrong, and I could be one of those horror stories. But I'd rather live my life not in fear, but in hope and in, planning for things to succeed. Because most likely it will, especially with what I'm doing now. In order to get the surgery back on the table, I am double, triple, quadrupling down on what needs to be done for my health. And if my health is above and beyond, then my surgery outcome is going to be that much better. So this is really what the best thing I need to be doing. And there was no avoiding it, so it needed to happen anyway. I just kind of needed a reminder. And unfortunately, I have to deal with this uncertainty principle of, it's not on the schedule anymore. Not until I get this back to where it needs to be. And then it can be on the schedule, and then I'll feel better because I'll know, hopefully it doesn't take too long. Surgeon said it won't take very long once I'm down. So I have to hold him to that. If I'm going to trust him with my body while I'm under for surgery, then I should trust him with this, so. These creative outlets are a good way for me to cope through this, because I'm not thinking about career. I'm not thinking about what happens next, because I already have an idea of what happens next, but I can't even act on those until I'm there. So that's going to be some time away. I can't be living for something far away. I need to be living for now. And right now, I'm focusing on my health, on my fitness, on my and on my creative endeavors. And ironically, those might create some good career opportunities too. By the way, keeping my body in shape, you know, like like keeping my body in shape is going to really help out my career too. So there's that. And on that note, I think I need to take a break. Bye bye.